We appreciate the governor doing that for us and sending us a message. You know, and everything else that I talked about that happened this year, in the middle of all this unbelievable year, my sweetest, dearest friend passed away. Phyllis Schlafly, who founded Eagle Forum, you've heard from many people today mention that, including the governor, was the most amazing lady. And it's while I was in Taiwan that her daughter Anne contacted me to tell me that her mother had passed. People would say to me over and over, so what's going to happen when Phyllis Schlafly passes? That was something I didn't let my head go there. I would say things like, which is the absolute truth, well, because they'd always ask, who's going to replace Phyllis? And I always said, no one. That's just the way it is. No one will replace Phyllis Schlafly. She is truly the Esther of our time. You need to, if you ever want to really find out about somebody, who listens to God, who was placed where she was by God for such a time as this, it's Phyllis Schlafly. And so that is just the way it is. There will never be another Phyllis Schlafly because she had a purpose, a time. This was her time, and she did what she came to earth to do. And part of what she came to earth to do, with everything else, was to start Eagle Forum and set up state organizations around the nation. We're one of those organizations. That's why Eagle Forum has been there for so long and stayed so strong, because Phyllis made sure that Eagle Forum was only as strong as her state organizations. They held up the national organization. And it's been a great relationship. As I've said multiple times, Phyllis was always there for us. There wasn't a time I couldn't pick up the telephone and call her. There's not very many leaders like Phyllis Schlafly that'll answer her own phone and talk to you, but she always answered her own phone. They were fast, short conversations because she got things done. Until toward the end when I talked to her often, and we had long conversations, and that was such an incredible blessing. When Phyllis Schlafly asked me to do this, I told her all the reasons why she'd asked the wrong person. I was just astounded. I couldn't believe it. I still think back on that time and think, I named off all the people that she should have asked instead of me. People a lot smarter than I am. One of them sitting here right now. I'll just mention her name and embarrass her. Lori Updike. There's just, all these really smart people, and for some reason she asked me to do it. And I tried to talk her out of it. I couldn't imagine that I would do it. Thinking back on it, there was a couple of reasons it was to be me, I guess. One, I always said because she picked somebody with a head that was so empty, the Lord would just open it up enough to just dump in what I needed to know for the moment, and I didn't know anything else to get confused. I just had to do what was there. The other reason, though, is because I had an extremely supportive husband. And that is probably the number one top reason. You could never, ever do this. And not very many people have husbands that would, 30 years, it was life-changing, continues to be life-changing. And he always, always supported me. So I guess those were the two reasons, and here I am all these years later. But I'm here now without Phyllis to pick up the phone and call. But I know she's there. I know she gave us the plan, and now we just need to follow her plan, continue to follow her plan, because she certainly left us a lot of her behind, a lot of her writings, her personality, her quotes. All those phone calls that she took from me so I could ask her questions will now sustain me and keep me going. So we're going to have a tribute to Phyllis right now. We've got a little film that we're going to play. And then we're going to hear from Phyllis's younger daughter, Anne Schlafly, Cori, who is the acting chairman of Eagle Forum right now. It's hard to watch Anne stand and speak because she's her mother. You know, she looks like her mother, she sounds like her mother. And that's a blessing. No, it is such a blessing, and I'm so grateful for that. So we'll show that clip now, and then you'll hear from Ann.
Thank you, wonderful friends, for being here tonight. I consider it a great honor to be part of Dr. Kennedy's conference. I have admired him and been his friend since we were together on the public platform in the exciting year of 1980. And it is great that you are carrying on his work. Thank you for being here. Tonight we're going to talk about a little bit of history. Doing the impossible. Defeating the Equal Rights Amendment. It's been about 25 years since we celebrated the final burial of the Equal Rights Amendment, known as ERA, a proposed amendment to the U.S. Constitution that was advertised as a great benefit to women, something that would rescue women from second-class citizenship, and for the first time, put women into the Constitution. ERA was passionately debated across America from 1972 to 1982. And then ERA was rejected by the American people. And the big lesson we learned from this is that in the marvelous process of self-government given to us by our founding fathers, it is possible for the people to defeat the entire political and media establishment and to win despite incredible odds. ERA passed Congress with only 23 out of 435 members of the House voting no, and passed the Senate with only 8 out of 100 senators voting no. And then it was sent out to the states on March 22nd, 1972. Within the first 12 months, it was ratified in 30 states, and under our Constitution, they only needed 8 more. ERA has such a righteous name. Who could possibly oppose equal rights? And supporting ERA were all those who had pretensions to political power, from left to right, from Ted Kennedy to George Wallace, and 3 presidents of the United States. ERA was actively supported by most of the pushy women's organizations, a consortium of 33 women's magazines, numerous Hollywood celebrities, and 99% of the media. But a little band of unflappable Stop ERA ladies in red, headquartered in my kitchen on the bluffs of the Mississippi River in Alton, Illinois, set out to challenge all the big guns of modern politics. We didn't have any internet. We didn't have fax machines. We only had the telephone and the Phyllis Schlafly report. And our campaign was started with the February 1972 Phyllis Schlafly report called What's Wrong with Equal Rights for Women? Over the 10 years, I wrote about 100 issues of my newsletter about ERA, and those reports staked out the battleground on which we engaged our adversaries, namely the legal rights that women would lose if ERA were ever ratified. And that strategic decision forced the feminists to spend their time attacking me and trying to answer the arguments in my newsletters. We showed that ERA was a fraud. While pretending to benefit women, it actually would be a big takeaway of rights that women then possessed, such as the right of an 18-year-old girl not to be drafted and sent into military combat, and the right of a wife to be supported by her husband. We got our facts straight from the writings of the pro-ERA legal authorities. Yale professor Thomas I. Emerson's article in the Yale Law Journal, and ACLU lawyer Ruth Bader Ginsburg's federally financed book called Sex Bias in the U.S. Code. These documents confirmed our arguments that ERA would draft women into military combat and abolish the presumption that the husband should support his wife, and also take away the Social Security benefits of wives and widows. The ERAers could not show any benefit to women, not even in employment, since employment laws were already sex neutral. The ERAers said their amendment would put women into the Constitution, but we showed that the Constitution doesn't mention men or women. It uses only sex-neutral words such as we the people, person, citizen, senator, and president. Now, another document we used was Revolution Tomorrow is Now. This was a publication of the National Organization for Women that set forth Now's radical pro-abortion and anti-Christian agenda. We reprinted Now's booklet, and we sold it to raise funds for Stop ERA. We told people to be sure and read both sides of the story. Well, the feminists began to put me up against all their heavyweights. And in 1973, I did my first debate with Betty Friedan at Illinois State University. That's when Friedan famously said she'd like to burn me at the stake. She said other things that are too indecent to tell in mixed company. Over the years, I've debated almost every prominent feminist and lectured on 500 college campuses. It has been an experience. Well, Tom Snyder of The Tomorrow Show made a big effort to stage a TV debate with two couples facing off against each other. He had a terribly hard time finding any ERA advocate who had a husband. But he finally found one we had never heard of, Brenda Feigen Fastow. And we had a debate on television.
The Equal Rights Amendment would impose a doctrinaire equality on men and women, and that's why we think it is a fraud, because it will actually take away from women some of the important rights they now have by law. For example, it will take away a woman's right to be exempt from the draft and to be exempt from combat duty. It will take away the right of a wife to be supported by her husband in a home provided by her husband, and her right to have her husband support her minor children.
Take a good look at her. After the debate, she left her husband and went to live with her lesbian girlfriend.
As soon as the state legislature started to have hearings and we began to have equal time, it was obvious that the people didn't want it and that it could be defeated.
From her home, she mobilized 50,000 housewives into a conservative strike force. Her women delivered flowers to legislators and closely monitored voting records on ERA.
So on June 30th, 1982, 1,500 battle-weary but triumphant Stop ERA volunteers gathered again in the ballroom of the Shoreham Hotel in Washington to celebrate our second and final burial of ERA at midnight. A giant rainbow of balloons rose high over the dais, and then many political personages, including President Reagan, paid tribute. The heroes of the day were the women who came from the 15 states that never ratified ERA, plus the 5 states that bravely rescinded their previous ratifications. We have them out there. They have stood the test. And we can build this into a mighty movement that can set America on the right path. We need your help in this effort. Then conquer we must. For our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. We have the people with the strength of character, and this battle we have waged has proved it. Thank you for being here. The evening closed with singing The Impossible Dream. We had truly won an impossible battle and defeated the unbeatable foe. Thank you for coming.
Well, that's not too hard an act to follow, is it? 42 years ago, a group of women, led by my mother, Phyllis Schlafly, founded Eagle Forum. And two of the original women are still serving on the board of directors directing Eagle Forum. And I am very encouraged about the future of Eagle Forum because Eagle Forum is so different from other public policy organizations. As my mother used to always say, most organizations are a smart guy with a mailing list. Eagle Forum is volunteers, and volunteers all across the United States, volunteers with state chapters, volunteers with local chapters, who take on the effort of citizen involvement to pursue public policy. And this is critical for the future of the United States. And I've always thought that my mother's greatest legacy was not in defeating the Equal Rights Amendment, but in empowering so many women across the country who never knew that they could or should or would speak up and engage in public debate. I think there's so many people I have met over the last couple of years who have said, I can't believe what I did, and I did it because your mother inspired me. And I think that is a tremendous legacy of her career and also for the future of Eagle Forum. Because what she did is that she recognized that leaders are not born, they're trained and made. And she worked hard to train future leaders. And, you know, in a way, Eagle Forum is really federalism because we have all these state chapters, and she recognized how important the states are. And leaders need to have some core values which my mother so really expressed. Energy, enthusiasm, commitment, and no, my mother never ever whined or complained about anything. She offered a lifetime example of being unafraid and unintimidated. And during the 1970s when she was going through the battle of ERA, she alluded to some of the nastiness in that film. I mean, there was a lot of nasty and a lot of name-calling and a lot of ugliness. And her line was, I'm not going to let those slobs ruin my day. She never lost her smile or her joy. She always accentuated the positive as a happy warrior. And I think her message was all the more powerful because of her grace and integrity. She always took the high road, and she never did any name-calling, and she never got caught in any misdeeds. And she always, and of course, I think an earlier speaker mentioned this, she always looked elegant. Well, let me tell you, she was always coiffed for breakfast. We never had PJs at breakfast. She looked the part, she lived the part, and it was who she was. I have my lessons that I've learned from my mother that I always thought were so important in dealing with the world, the political world. And I want to share with you a few of the lessons that I think are so valuable from her. It's always about the next election. It's never about the last election. Win or lose an election, the day after an election or a vote is the time to evaluate your next move. So once the votes are cast, organize for the next issue and the next vote, even if that means repealing the last vote that you just lost. Last night at dinner, Gail told me that she had worked hard for a candidate in Utah, and her candidate lost, and the next day, my mother called her up and said, okay, you're going to donate to the candidate you just tried to defeat. You got to keep your eyes on the prize and look for how you're going to win the next vote. Second, no ballot contains a explain your vote section. People will vote for you, with you, for a wide variety of reasons. accept their support. Don't argue with their reasons. Not everyone will support you on every single issue. People will vote with you for a variety of reasons, and you need to make alliances on each issue and not a total platform, because people rate their issues differently and from how you might prioritize. And so work with anyone who will work with you sometimes. I think this is a critical factor in my mother's success, is do not hold grudges. My mother never held a grudge against anybody, and that's one reason why she was such a happy warrior. Is she just had this incredible ability to slough off any slight or insult. And the art of politics is friendliness across the spectrum. I dare say, if you tend to hold grudges, get out of politics. My mother's Democratic U.S. Senator never failed to wish her happy birthday every year. And in the past couple of months since her passing, I've had so many people come up to me and say, well, I never agreed with anything your mother said, but I always respected her, and how critical that is in making who you are come across as such an important value, and is to have the respect of everybody across the spectrum. This is always one of my favorite lines that she would say to people. God is on our side, but God has a lot to do. Don't count on God to stuff the ballot box for you. Get out and do it yourselves. And I think that really shows her practical, pragmatic side. and how hard she tried to motivate everybody to get out, to get involved, and to vote. Another aspect is that she fully understood that everything that she said or did was on the record. There is no such thing as off the record, as we've learned with WikiLeaks and all the emails of the last year. Anything you say or do or text or Facebook or tweet can be on the front page of the New York Times. Make sure you always say the right thing, and then you'll never be caught. One of her critical geniuses in her political world was how to frame the debate. Now, in that film, she talked about that she specified that ERA would ensure that women lost rights that they had. In other words, that there was no gain. She reframed the debate from the title of the amendment, from equal rights, to say that there were no, that it was a loss of rights. And I think this is we can always use this advice today. Don't use the language that your opponents use in talking about issues. And so the easy one is to say pro-life, because after all, the baby doesn't have a choice. Or death taxes, because instead of estate taxes, because everybody dies, but it's the tax that gets you. It's only when you die. Or recently, with Obamacare, the phrase death panels, because that's a pretty apt descriptor for Obamacare. There are other phrases that, the phrase I'd like to banish is crony capitalism, because don't sully a good word like capitalism with cronyism. Cronyism is the elites giving favors to each other, and it has nothing to do with capitalism. Cronyism is socialism. But another phrase that I think the conservatives should never use or never let other people use for them is social justice. It's not social justice at all, it's socialist justice, because they want to take my money for their pet projects. And another phrase that my mother liked to redo is, and I think this may come up this year as a policy initiative, is government paid family leave. Well, my mother got to the heart of it. She called it government paid babysitting. So to use the power of the right word to get to the heart of the argument was one of the critical things that my mother did that really helped so much. And that was a way of distilling the message to 60 seconds, because she was a master of the soundbite. Get the word, get the phrase, and endlessly repeat, and then your message will get across. Much of my mother's political work was spent focusing on the states. And many politicians are very eager to get to the national limelight in Washington, D.C. But as many of you know, more action actually happens in the state legislatures. We heard this morning all those congressmen talking about how hard they're having, much trouble they're having getting something done. Well, in the states, you can actually get something done. You can more easily pass good bills and defeat bad bills in the individual states. You can have more influence with your politicians because you knew them win before they made it to the big time. And this next generation of political leaders will then be forever indebted to you. My mother was very good at always thanking people. After a vote was taken, most people move on to the next issue, but win or lose, you want to thank everybody who was on your side. As my mother used to always say, honey catches more flies than vinegar. And that goes to thanking your supporters. There were three of the speakers today told me that they have on their walls their Eagle Forum award signed by my mother on their wall. They said it's a point of pride. My mother gave out thousands of Eagle Forum awards, appreciation for volunteerism, which she hand-signed each one. And I think that kind of memento, because after all, we're volunteering. We're not in it for the money, we're in it for the love, the spirit, the righteousness, and the thanking and the awards are part of, that's our payback, and it's such an important thing to do for us to encourage the next generation. One of my favorite quotes from my mother is always that politicians have more voters before they speak than afterwards. It's much easier to like a candidate before you find out that you do not agree with him on one particular issue. So get prepared, learn the issues that your particular audience is interested in, and get ready to answer the questions in a way that won't lose their support. Plus, short speeches are much more effective than long speeches. Back to distilling your message to 60 seconds. At Eagle Forum, at our regular meetings, she was famous for putting a stopwatch on all the speakers of 3 minutes. If you couldn't say it in 3 minutes, she wasn't interested. That was it. She was also available. And Gail mentioned that she didn't hide behind any kind of staff or bureaucracy. She answered her own phone and email. Our phone number was always in the telephone book published. People could call us any time of day or night, our home phone number, and it then morphed into the office phone number later on. But even when she moved, she always had her phone number published. Last year, my cell phone number was published in Breitbart, and I got a lot of calls. And so many people said to me, well, I've assumed you've changed your cell phone number. And I said, why would I? I've been trained. Answer your phone, talk to people. This is so if anyone wants to call me, it's all right. It's on Breitbart, my cell phone number. I'm still using the same number. And my feeling is that with those one-on-one conversations, and this is what I learned from my mother, you have such a power to influence people and persuade people with those kinds of conversations. So never be afraid to talk to anybody at any time. And this goes back to her ultimate piece of advice for me and for all of her Eagles. Smile, smile, and never stop smiling. Be happy and optimistic. Your supporters need your encouragement, and most importantly, your opponents are driven crazy by your joy. Why are you so happy? My mother understood that the core of society is the family, and the breakdown of the family that with the unwed, the children without benefit of a two-family home, it affects all of us, affects all of society, and affects all of us in education, in crime, in economic prosperity, in the national debt, and we're all affected by the family structure. You cannot separate social issues from national issues. And I'll just give a little point here because my mother talked about the military, the draft, the idea of drafting women, which was such a key issue for her for so many years. And this issue has not left the national table. The Obama administration wants to put women in combat, wants women for the Selective Service. These issues came up last year. I'm hopeful that these dumb ideas kind of disappear in this year. But this is a question of where it combines the weakening of our military with the weakening of our families. And it's very hard to, it's not what the United States needs going forward to being a strong country. Because I know this is a hard concept for certain people to understand, but men and women are not interchangeable. And those who think that men and women are interchangeable with each other, I call them biology deniers. So what's next for Eagle Forum? I believe strongly in the future of Eagle Forum and the spirit of Phyllis Schlafly. We will stick to core principles. We have a tremendous group of state leaders in various states who are continuing this important work. And we are working on training the next generation to take over. And we do it all with a Phyllis Schlafly smile. Thank you very much.
It's hard to watch those pictures, and yet it's exciting and just so reassuring for those wonderful memories. And as I said, I never could answer what would happen when Phyllis was gone, but you can see we're going forward. Anne is doing all she can to make sure that that happens, and we've got such great people. Uni Smith, who was the vice president of Eagle Forum, so she is now the acting president. I say acting because Uni she's already the president of Alabama Eagle Forum. She lives in Alabama. She doesn't have any intentions of leaving. So everybody just jumped in to do what needed to be done while they find those people that will continue to move forward and lead Eagle Forum. Utah Eagle Forum, like all the Eagle Forum organizations, is a separate entity. We take, Phyllis would pick her presidents and ask who she wanted to be the president. I mean, she also had to use, her board was part of that. Phyllis would take that to the board, and the board would decide and who should or should not be the Eagle Forum president in each state. Same applies to getting rid of an Eagle Forum president. Even Phyllis couldn't say, you know what, I don't like what you're doing, you're done. No, couldn't do that. She had to take that to her board also. Phyllis was brilliant in how she set up the board for Eagle Forum so that it would always go on, and there would be those there to protect it no matter what happened. But the first thing that Phyllis had me do, and there had been other Eagle Forum presidents before me, by the way, and so Eagle Forum had been here long before I became the president almost 30 years ago. But she wanted me to incorporate and to set up our own organization. So that's what we did. We've got several of the original people that are in this room, and they were part of that. And we did incorporate and had the bylaws and everything actually drawn up by an attorney and put on file. So we are with the state, incorporated as Utah Eagle Forum. So we are a separate organization, and we are in control of that organization. And that's how Phyllis wanted it. So that nothing changed. Phyllis is not here with us on earth now. But Eagle Forum, Utah Eagle Forum, is exactly the same. It's the same organization with board members and the same plan, and it will continue to be that way. So if you have concerns about what's going to happen next now that Phyllis Schlafly is gone, well, things are going to go on the way they are. And when I'm gone, things will go on just the way they have been. And you've met so many of our wonderful board members and the people that work with Eagle Forum. I just have such affection for all of you that have been so supportive and been with us. So we'll be there. Things will be the same. We'll be at the legislative session starting in just another week. And we'll be there, just like I said before, we'll be there in the mornings before the legislators get there, and we'll be there at night after they leave. Senator Al Jackson talked about that, and he said, well, I'd get there in the morning, and there they were. He says, Gail sitting there, and he'd always come by and sit down and talk to me. Then when he left at night, he'd say goodbye, and he said, but I know she went home because she changed her clothes. So that's what it takes to get things done. That's what it takes to be up there doing what we need to do.